Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. This episode is sponsored by Janji. Janji is a local to Boston running apparel company dedicated to exploring, connecting, and giving back through running. Inspired by travel, informed by function, and built for adventure, Janji makes running essentials to equip you wherever you run or roam. The company was founded on the core belief that water is a human right and donates 2% of their sales to supporting clean water organizations around the world. I've known the two co-founders of Janji for over 5 years, and it's been a privilege to see them grow and increase the level at which they've been able to give back to the running community and to the world in general. Welcome back. I have Ben Rosario joining me for round 2 of the podcast. Ben was actually guest number 1 and has the honor of being, I think, 105 as well. So, Ben, thanks for taking some time to chat today.
Thanks for having me. Yes, I remember that podcast. I think we were in a hotel in Flagstaff using maybe one of the sort of dining rooms, I guess, that they had in there, and you were doing it for the first time, but I thought it went great. So hopefully we'll have some fun again today.
Definitely. Yeah, I just loved how that conversation went. We were sitting in the hotel there, and we were talking about your team, and you're like, yeah, everybody's always up for interviews and media and podcasts and whatnot. And I was like, podcasts, you say? I've got 2 mics in my bag. And 10 minutes later, we were recording a podcast. So thanks for your flexibility and being so open to sharing the experience. So before we dive too far in, big question is, who is Ben?
Yeah, I don't remember if you asked me that the first time. I have listened to some of your podcasts, and I should have been prepared for this because I know you do this now. Man, I just try to do things that I love and do them as well as I possibly can. I've never been a person who's particularly great at things that I don't enjoy. I wasn't the best student in the world. I got A's in the classes I liked and C's or worse in the classes I didn't, it's pretty much as simple as that. When I find something I like, I really get after it.
That's awesome. So we're chatting today about some big news in the industry. Your HOKA Northern Arizona Elite team just signed a 4-year deal with HOKA. And as we were talking about before we got started, you said you think this is a really good deal for the industry because the groups are the best model going. We're seeing a lot of groups popping up. There's a newly named group in your own town, out in Flagstaff now, with the support of Under Armour. There are Adidas teams. There are other teams that are being supported in big ways by some of these shoe brands. So let's kick it off with first, why do you think that the groups are the best model?
Yeah, I think I did tell you that before we started, that I'm biased, obviously, but I'm educated in this opinion, having been in this industry a long time, and I think that they're the best model for a number of reasons. I'll just give them in no particular order. One is the groups over time create a brand for themselves. NAZ Elite, we have a really strong, powerful brand. Hanson's has a really strong, powerful brand. The Bowerman Track Club has a really strong, powerful brand, and I could go on. But when a shoe company signs an athlete to one of those groups specifically, automatically that athlete's personal brand is going to be amplified in a way that it would not be on its own. Okay, so that's one thing from a purely marketing standpoint. But then from a performance standpoint, the shoe company then can feel confident that runner X, because he or she is going to Hanson's or is going to NAZ Elite or is going to Bowerman, going to Zap, whatever it might be, right? That athlete is going to be taken care of. They're going to have coaching. They're going to have strength and conditioning. They're going to have proper access to massage therapy. They're going to be taken care of in a very professional way. So I think that sort of knowledge and that sort of, that's sort of consistency in training that you're going to get in a group, not to mention the fact that then your athlete or this athlete is going to be training with other high level people and is going to be pushed on a daily basis to be the best they can be. I think all those things and more are why it makes total sense for a shoe company to prefer that their athletes be in one of these groups.
Yeah, I love that. I find it exciting to follow along with the groups and particularly the way that some of the groups have handled 2020 with the intra-squad racing and racing other teams. I think that it provides these unique opportunities where, for many athletes, it probably feels like college, right?
Yeah, I think to an extent. I mean, it's a much more serious and professional environment than college, but yeah,
right.
it has that team aspect, the camaraderie, the culture. I would also say that, to your point about watching all these different things, these inter squad things, except you can't do those by yourself.
Right.
The teams are able to provide a much more consistent level of awareness for their brand partners. I mean, take our team, obviously, for example. So currently we have a dozen athletes on the team. If you go back to 2019, pre-pandemic, right, we're racing almost every weekend.
Right.
And so, yeah, there might be one athlete that's taking a break or a few athletes taking a break or one athlete that's injured or what have you. But the team is performing and producing results and creating content on a consistent basis in a way that an individual cannot. Again, then moving forward into the pandemic year, it's sort of exposed how great the groups really are and how tough it is to build a brand individually, because the groups were able to create a lot of really cool, exciting content, like Jerry's group doing a lot of the inter-squad meets that they did. Like you mentioned on Instagram, we did a virtual race against Lee Troop's group in Boulder, Team Boulder. We did some inter-squad stuff. Then when the traditional race opportunities were available, we had the budget and the means to get out there and do those things as well. We headed out to LA and competed at the Sunset Tour. And there's just a lot of things that you just flat can't do as an individual that you can when you're part of a group.
Definitely. So we talked about why you think the groups are the best model for the athletes. Let's talk about the industry. A lot of the commentary around what was announced yesterday was reflecting on the fact that this is not just impacting your athletes. This is hopefully impacting the way that sponsors look at teams and look at athletes in general. Like the biggest is the health insurance piece and the fact that it's okay for an athlete to start a family, and that's supported versus we see what's happened in the past. So talk to me about how you think this can have an impact on the industry and all athletes.
Well, as with any industry, particularly the sports industry, it's a competitive industry, right? People are trying to one up one another. People are trying to do better. And so, in this contract, we were trying to make sure that we were going to provide amenities for our athletes and our future athletes that were going to be ultimately better than what's out there right now. And I'm sure someone will try to top that. I mean, that's how it goes, right? So the health insurance piece that you mentioned is interesting because, again, it's part of the advantage of being a group. So HOKA is not providing this health insurance. NAZ Elite is providing this health insurance with the funding that HOKA provides. Because as a 501c3 nonprofit, we're able to create a group health insurance plan, and our athletes have been on that plan actually now for more than a year, but paying their own individual insurance underneath that plan. Moving forward, because our funding level will increase so much with this new contract, one of the things as a board of directors that we decided to do was carve out enough money from that lump sum budget that we'll be receiving so that we can actually now pay for the individual health insurance coverage of each of the athletes that chooses to be on that plan. There's still flexibility, of course, if they wanted to be on their spouse's plan or on a different plan, but the plan we're on actually is quite good, and I think can potentially serve as a model for other groups that are out there.
That's awesome. Who proposed the idea of a dramatic increase in sponsorship?
Well, Jonathan, I don't think anything. I don't think anybody would want a decrease. No, I think that as a board, we had been discussing for a while. The fact that this current contract we're in, which is a great contract, by the way, was going to be ending at the end of 2020. And, just naturally, we felt like we had performed really well. We felt like we had been good brand partners and had provided quite a bit of ROI, return on investment for HOKA. And, of course, we were going to ask for more. And I think they expected that. And it was really quite a mutual negotiation. It was not, I have to say, us creating this proposal and bringing it to them. It was more NAZ Elite and HOKA working on this together back and forth over a period of months, getting it to where we really wanted it, which was cool because it was them saying, hey, we want to give you more. We want to give you guys what you need to continue thriving. And it was us saying, great, here's what we need and here's why we need it. And it was just kind of like that again for a few months until we had all the details squared away. And I don't mean to make it sound simple, but that's really what it was like.
That's awesome. And so with that, do you plan to bring a larger number of athletes on board?
I don't really think it's about a larger number of athletes. I think it's more about providing the athletes that we have with the very best amenities possible to put them in a position to succeed. And then as we move forward, continuing to raise the bar with the type of athlete that we bring on to the team in the first place. And those athletes, of course, cost more money. So I think it's about increasing the amount of money that HOKA is spending on our athletes from a base compensation perspective, but not doing so because they're adding more athletes. It's more just the level of athlete that we're bringing in. So, it's been a natural evolution. Obviously, some of the first athletes we had on the team, athletes like Scott Smith and Steph Bruce, who both went to UC Santa Barbara. Steph was All-American twice, Scott 0 times, Kellen Taylor 1-time All-American at Wichita State. These are smaller programs. These athletes had less of a resume coming out of the NCAA. And of course, these people have had amazing careers. Scott's run 2:11. Steph is 6th at the Olympic trials, multiple-time national champion. Kellen, of course, 2:24 marathoner, just ran 31:07 for 10,000. These are great accomplishments. Sort of the next group of people more recently that we've brought in, they do have better credentials. People like Alice Wright, Rory Linkletter, Matt Baxter, all of those athletes were runner up at the NCAA level. So, what we hope to do with them moving forward is bring them to an even higher level than some of our original athletes. Although that won't be easy to do considering how much they've accomplished. And then, of course, the next step moving forward is to grab the very, very top recruits coming out of the NCAA, people who have run the very fastest times and have won national titles. And then let's see what we can do with those folks.
That's awesome. Blue Sky, 5 years from now, what are you guys doing?
Well, more of the same, but I think just bigger and better. I hope that people have seen us as a group that's been pretty aggressive and maybe revolutionary in how we've shared content, and we want to continue to be that way. We want to be really aggressive. We want to build our brand through content. We want to We have some pretty aggressive goals with what we want to do with our YouTube channel moving forward. Way more videos than ever before, tons more subscribers, really consistent content on YouTube. We want to continue to give our athletes the opportunity to build their own brands through podcasts like Matt Baxter, Rory Linkletter, Nick Hogger have done with their Running Rivals podcast, and Scott Falble with his Showrunners podcast. We want to do more of that. We want to be pretty professional and clean in a lot of the things that we produce because we'll have the budget to do that. And I think that's exciting for me. And then performance-wise, that's always number one. Any of these other things I talk about are really fun for me to talk about, but we wouldn't have that opportunity if we weren't performing at a high level. Nobody cares about your YouTube channel if you're not, doing what we've done on the track, on the roads, on the grass, obviously winning the Olympic trials with Alafine this past February was the perfect example, right? So when you ask what we want to be doing 5 years from now, that's what we want to be doing. We want to be continuing to win big races. We want to be competing on the national stage and the global stage. We want to turn those Olympic trials victories into medals at the world stage. That's how good we want to be.
That's awesome. So it sounds like many of the goals outside of performance and recovery are also social media related. Will you be bringing in more resources of the human capital variety to support that?
Yes, I think we will. It'll probably be on a contracted out basis, which is what we've done before, but I just think the budget will be bigger. We definitely considered a full-time marketing position, but ultimately when we went down the list of priorities, we felt like there were, again, performance being number one, there were bigger needs to increase the physio budget, the travel budget. The assistant coaching role is going to become a full-time role, which will be a big change for us. We felt like those sort of things would be more important than a full-time marketing position. However, it's not to say the marketing budget hasn't increased. It certainly has, and you can call it marketing or you can call it content creation, but we will be able to work with, I'll tell you right now, people like Stephen Kirsch and Ryan Sterner, who we've worked with many times from Rabbit Wolf Creative, we'll be able to do more things with them. And so that is definitely a part of the plan.
That's awesome. What is it like, switching gears a little bit, what has it been like to navigate 2020 with now the restrictions that were in place that may have changed, while also having some of your athletes, PRing and setting lifetime PRs?
Are you asking how we did that, or just to take you through it?
Yeah. What's been the approach to 2020 in general? I think it's been fascinating to see how the different groups have handled it. I had Shalane Flanagan on the podcast back in March, and her approach to or their approach at Bowerman was essentially, we're going to run a bunch of miles and we're not going to do crazy hard workouts. We're just going to, she called it, stuff the silo. And that was the approach March, April, maybe into May, before things changed a little bit. Was it similar? Was it a dramatic scale back, particularly for the athletes that had just run in the trials?
I think a lot of it was analyzing where we were at the time in terms of this virus. Like anybody, we weren't different than any other industry in the sense that, look, we had to kind of step back and say, whoa, this thing is for real. We need to be really careful when there was so much uncertainty. And so, we shut down practicing together for 6 weeks. We trained on our own. During those 6 weeks, obviously, I was trying to put on my critical thinking cap and analyze what was going on and try to determine what was the best strategy moving forward. Once we got into, I guess it was May, and the stay-at-home order got lifted, and it became a little bit more clear what we were dealing with here and how you could keep yourself safe, then we felt better about training together. And then we met as a group, and I said, look, I'll tell you what we said is I want to play offense, during this thing. I want to get aggressive with training. I want to get as fit as we can. I want to create opportunities for ourselves. If traditional opportunities aren't there, then look, we got to play offense. We got to create the opportunities ourselves. And we did that. We did those things. We did train hard. We did get really fit. We did things like some time trials, some inter-squad meets, and I mean, I was very proud of the team. They really took to that, and they kept their foot on the pedal. They didn't feel sorry for themselves. They didn't wallow in self-pity about not having the trials and not having these races that they're used to running. They just got after it, and we had fun, and we tried some different things in training. And I think for the most part, if playing offense is the metaphor that I was using, then I would say we scored big time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I loved watching that race against Boulder Track Club where your route took a gnarly turn up that last hill in Buffalo Park. That was that was a little cruel, but fun to see. Yeah, I think it's been fascinating to watch how everybody has handled it, and obviously there are no rules, so you can sort of make your own rules and see how it turns out. Did you have any athletes, and you don't have to name names, but were there any athletes that were dealing with a lack of motivation?
I'm sure there were at times. I'm certainly speaking more collectively about what we did. A couple of the athletes, of course, that had injuries during this time, which there were a couple, I think they struggled at times, which is natural. And I tried to just cut them some slack and just remind them that, look, this sucks. You don't want to sugarcoat it. You want to be honest with them. But better times are ahead, and I think that's all you can do is just be really honest and pragmatic about it. And I think even though there were some folks who did have a difficult few weeks here and there, or a difficult month, I think that everybody's come out of it pretty good.
That's awesome. What do you love most about coaching?
I think I've come to love, well, let's see. I love the big moments. I love the big moments. I'm definitely a sports guy. So, there's nothing like the Olympic trials or the big city marathons or the national championships. I very much live for those moments. And like the athletes, I understand that I've got to put in a ton of work on the back end to get to those moments and to make those moments everything they can be. And so I've sort of just embraced that idea that, if we're gonna be able to perform, or if we're going to perform on the absolute biggest stage as best we can, we've got to work really hard, and I'm no exception. And I've learned to really enjoy the grind that it takes to get there. And I just love seeing them accomplish these things. I was looking through pictures yesterday, trying to create a little Instagram post about the news of the contract on my own Instagram page, and I was looking for pictures of myself with the athletes, and I saw a picture and posted it of me with Rory and Alafine after they set the team records for the half marathon, and of course with Alafine after the trials, and with Scott Fallwood at Boston. And man, those are just forever moments. So that's what I live for.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see, these successes on the biggest stages, and it must have been quite a moment down in Atlanta. What feels like a million years ago.
It was a great moment. Yeah, that whole day is a day that I will never forget. I try to really hold on to even the little moments of that day. Obviously, everybody's going to remember Alafine coming down the stretch, and I certainly remember sprinting over there. And I saw her with a half mile to go. I didn't see her actually cross the line, but sprinting over there and finally seeing her in the tent afterward and giving her a big hug. Of course, I remember those moments, but I also remember screaming at Steph, and watching her just dig so deep. seeing Kellen point to her leg and realizing that, the injury that she had that turned out to be a stress fracture was rearing its ugly head, and it was a very sad moment. But I remember that moment too. And those things, even though they're not the best, they still are really vivid, to me, that from that day. Same thing with Scott and Scott, they didn't make the team, and that was devastating in a lot of ways, but it was just such pure emotion, so raw, because we had worked so hard together. And so I don't want to forget any of those things. I want to remember everything about that day, because it was in a lot of ways the culmination of not just 12 weeks of work, but 6 years.
For sure. Thanks again to John G for sponsoring this episode. As a runner, you know the importance of hydration, but you might not know that almost 800 million people lack access to drinking water. By working together, we can create viable solutions, and collectively, we can have a greater impact. The John G Collective is one way to do that. It's a membership that earns you a ton of perks like discounts on gear and first access to new collections. It's also a community of adventurous runners around the world. 100% of the membership fee goes towards supporting clean water programs. I'm a member and enjoy knowing that it is a small step that each of us can take that, when pooled together, can have quite an impact. It's also great knowing that once the world reopens, I'll have runners in almost every city to enjoy a run with when I'm on the road in a new place. If you use the code FTLR, like for the long run, you can join the John G Collective for $50. You'll receive a free singlet as well as a special members-only discount for life. Every dollar from that will go towards supporting clean water programs. I hope you'll join me. What's been your biggest lesson that you've personally learned this year? I know a lot of us are learning and doing things in ways we've never done before, and so I'm curious, what have you learned?
I was just talking about this the other day. I do think I've learned some things about myself that I probably already knew, but maybe hadn't thought about in a deep way. So, for example, today, so this was supposed to be a week off for me. I was supposed to take close to 2 weeks off after the event we put on in Santa Barbara last Tuesday, which was an inter-squad meet where we ran a men's race and a women's race, and went really well. And I was kind of crashed afterward, like I usually am after something big. And I thought that I needed all this time off, but by the end of the weekend, I was feeling depressed and really not having a good time at all. And so I decided on a whim to come down here to Sedona, Arizona, and just get an Airbnb. My wife and daughter are going to join me this weekend, but I'm just here by myself and I'm working, but I'm not forcing it. There's nothing I have to be doing. I'm just doing things that I'm really enjoying. I'm working on a couple side projects, and I'm going for hikes and runs, and probably after this podcast, I'm going to go for another little jog this afternoon, and I'm enjoying myself. But I've kind of come to realize that I really enjoy work, and so for me, it's very healthy to be working. And I think I learned a lot about what a break needs to be for me. And the week that I'm experiencing here is hopefully going to be a good model for me moving forward. It's a really healthy way for me to spend a break.
That's awesome. I have so many questions because I'm the exact same way. I can't take time off because, like you said, I get bored. Mm-hmm. So how have you structured it so that it's both restorative and productive and keeps you happy?
Well, yeah, I can answer this. I mean, I'm living it right now. So I'm no planning. No planning is the answer. I'm just trying to let the body drive the ship, which I tell the athletes all the time on certain workouts. Hey, if it's a fartlek workout, let's let the body drive the ship. Or some of the veterans, if they're doing a long steady state, hey, let's not be so locked into the time today. Let's let the body drive the ship. And so that's what I'm doing this week in terms of work. I'm waking up. The only thing I'm really forcing myself to do is get out the door and do a little exercise because I need to do that. But then when I come back, if I feel like watching a movie, I watch a movie. And when I get the urge to work, then I work. And for example, right before this podcast, I finished up a chapter of a book I'm working on, and I feel pretty confident that this was a good day, and I'll do this podcast and I'll probably be done for the day. So that's for me, that's a great way to spend the day. And I made sure that there was nothing really pertinent that I have to get done. So all of these things are things that I'm choosing to do.
That's awesome. Along the lines of, you mentioned movies, we had a question from Chris Heisler, who you may know as well.
Yeah.
Coach Ben is an underrated movie quote connoisseur. I would love to know what quote or quotes he most often references when talking to the athletes.
Oh, geez. I don't know that I knowingly or consciously reference a lot of them when talking to the athletes. I've certainly used quotes in presentations or meetings, I guess, with the athletes over the years. Here's one that it's not necessarily that I said this. I just thought of it at the time and loved it, and I think it applies sometimes to competitive athletes and people. I love Good Will Hunting. That's my favorite movie, and there's this part in the movie. I love how I love the juxtaposition of how Will Hunting, the character, is so confident in some things, but so vulnerable in other ways. But one of his confident moments was he was doing the equations with Dr. Lambeau in the MIT office room or whatever it was, and he got angry and he set fire to one of the pieces of paper that had all the answers on it. And Lambeau was going crazy trying to blow out the fire and get it. And Damon or Will Hunting was he was kind of disgusted with the whole thing because he said something to the effect of, "Do you know how easy this shit is for me?" and it was just so confident. And I remember one time in a workout, Marty Heher, who used to run for us, but then went to med school and now he runs for the Reebok Boston Track Club with Coach Fox, Chris Fox. But Marty's an awesome dude, and he's this guy who, similar to Will Hunting, in the sense that he can be super confident and competitive and fiery, but in his regular life, he's just the most chill dude ever, and never curses, and he's just family man, etc. But I remember this one workout where we were doing 4x800, and it was pretty hard. It was supposed to go like 212, 208, 204, 2 flat on fairly short rest, and he got out a little quick on one of the repeats. Maybe it was the 208. And Craig Lutz, one of the guys that was doing the workout, got angry because I think Craig was really worried about the workout and didn't want to go too fast and didn't want to, he didn't want to put himself or the others in a hole. So he got mad at Marty for going out too fast. And Marty was just on his game that day and basically said something to Craig like, "You just want me to lead the whole thing? I'll just lead the rest of the workout. If you want, that's fine. I'll just do that." And he was so angry at him. And I mean, he was yelling. And it was so cool in a way because it was Marty just kind of saying, "You know how easy this shit is for me?" And I loved it.
That's awesome. Switching gears from Cambridge, Massachusetts, back to Flagstaff, Arizona. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about Tommy Rivers Puzey and what he means to the community out there. And it's been incredible to see the rallying and the support that's gone on within Flagstaff, but not just within Flagstaff, but everywhere in general. So talk to me about his relationship with NAZ and what he means to your team.
So Rivers is just one of these guys. First of all, he's a total Renaissance man. If you're listening to this podcast, hopefully you've come across this story by now, but I'll just give you the nutshell version. First of all, he has cancer. He has a really rare form of lung cancer, which is what you're talking about in terms of the community rallying around him. But he's this amazing guy who's a marathoner, an ultramarathoner, a triathlete, an adventurist, a model. He's a massage therapist. He's a physical therapist. He's knows a bunch of languages. He's lived in Hawaii. He's super, super unique. And in Flagstaff, I think he's one of these guys that pretty much everybody knows, but not that many people know him well. And that's the category I would put myself in. I certainly know him. I've certainly hung around him and had a ton of experiences with him, but I don't claim to know him terribly well because he's just doing so many things. And yet I'm mesmerized by him. He's this super interesting guy. So his relationship with us is mostly that, over the years, he's been a on and off kind of training partner, jumping in a workout here and there. We'll see him at the bagel run on Thursday mornings, which is kind of a community run. And what he's really done over the last couple of years is been really open to helping out our women, because, though he's a great runner, he's not, on the level of our men. But he's not that far away from where our women are. I think he's run a 2:18 marathon. Kellen's run 2:24, so he's pretty close, and he's really good at pacing them, and he's always happy to do it. And if I'm in need of a pacer, I can text him on a Friday, and he'll be there on Saturday morning. Regardless of what he did, and he never takes any money for it. He never takes any credit for it. He's just happy to help others. And I think that's why people love him so much. Just really quickly, a quick story at the Prague Marathon when Kellen was running there in 2019 in May. He was there to try to get his trials qualifier as well. And he knew that Kellen was having a little bit of a leg issue going into the race. And so he offered to do some work on her in the couple days leading into the race, and ended up seeing her a ton over those last 2 days, worked on her a bunch. Because as I said, he's a massage therapist and a PT. Didn't take any money for it, wouldn't. Then the next day in the race, or on Sunday morning, he's racing. He ends up having kind of a bad race, starts falling off his goal time. She comes by with about 10 miles to go and catches up to him. And look, I'm sure he was in no mood to really move very fast at that point. And yet he kind of got a second wind and ended up running with her for most of the next 10 miles, and essentially helping her out. And she ended up getting fourth place. And, that's just the kind of guy he is. I think so many people in that situation would have just dropped out or said, good luck, and sent her on her way. Or guys with egos would have tried to kind of pull away from her, but he's just not like that. His first thought is of others, and that's why he's so cool.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible story, all of it. But I think it highlights the power of the team and what we got to talking about initially, where you think that this is the best approach, and I agree, because when the goal is more than just yourself, you can do some pretty incredible things.
Yeah, that's what we've always believed, and that's what we've created, is this, what we call a we culture, W-E, capital W, capital E, where you believe that you're better because of your teammates, and you believe it's part of your responsibility to make them better. On days when you feel the best, then you take the load, because you know that there's going to be a day where you don't feel great and somebody's going to take the load for you. And when you put on that jersey, yeah, you're running for yourself, but you're also running for them, and all the people that believe in you. So in every way, I think that the team culture that we've created here has contributed greatly to our success.
That's awesome. Switching gears again a little bit, another question was, with contracts becoming more expensive for companies, and I mean that sort of as a line item, like the line item is larger. Mm-hmm. Do you think there will be a decrease in signed athletes as the time goes on? And will there be less? Do you think there'll be less opportunities for the semi-pros to make it on the competitive scene?
That's an interesting question. I don't really know exactly what that means. Semi-pros are never going to make it. That's the definition of a semi-pro. I don't know. I think there's always going to be a place for tiers. You've got your pros who are making a living. Then you've got your semi-pros who are making a semi-living. That's the definition, right? They're making some money, but not enough to have it be a living. And then there's the top amateurs, right? And the top amateurs push the semi-pros, and the semi-pros push the pros. I don't think that the group model is going to be hurting the sub-elites in any way. In fact, I could see a situation where, much like there's more professional groups now, I would like to believe that that also gives a model for more semi-elite, semi-pro kind of groups as well, to kind of model themselves after that in their own community. We kind of did that in St. Louis when I owned Big River Running Company, the running store there. We had sort of a sub-elite group, and we modeled it and ran it kind of like I run this group now, where we trained together and we pushed each other, and we sort of became quote unquote stars in the St. Louis running community, winning most of the big local races. And I think those, and look, more people are running than ever, and the sport was as popular as ever when the pandemic hit. And I think it'll see a big boom when things come back. And I would look at it optimistically. I think there's going to be more opportunities for semi-pros than ever before, because the sport is going to be really healthy when it comes back.
Cool. I would agree with that. One of the conversations I've been having with a handful of friends who are also professional athletes is around the sponsorship model, and how, from where I sit, being on the brand side, I've seen a bit of a shift away from, I say a bit of a shift, a large shift away from results-driven decisions. So it doesn't just matter that you're at the top of the podium. It matters that you're engaging with your fans, doing what your team is doing, and caring about the community. And so I've spoken with a handful of my friends on this who are, signed by shoe companies or have apparel sponsors or whatnot, and they are wondering the same thing. So my question to you, as somebody who's on that side and seeing the negotiations and seeing both athletes who need to achieve results but also need to engage with their fans, would you agree with that assessment that it is moving away from just being, if you're an excellent athlete, you'll get a contract, and moving in a way where you do really need to be engaging with your fans?
I think there are parts of that I agree with and parts of that I disagree with. Look, like I said, I think a little bit earlier, you still have to perform. I mean, nobody's going to pay. Oh gosh, I don't want to put a time out there, because then I'll be that'll be mean. Nobody's going to pay top dollar for a mediocre runner who's not performing at a high level, even if that runner is really active on social media, really active in his or her community, etc. That doesn't mean they can't get a sponsorship. That doesn't mean they can't get some money. That doesn't mean they can't scrape by. All those things are possible. And to your point, I agree with you 100% that those things are valuable in a way that they never were before. So certainly there's possibilities there that used to not be there. However, if you want to talk about really making real money and making a living, you've got to be one of the top athletes. Now, here's the thing, though. Here's the shift, right? The top athletes are going to get paid more if they also are really good at all that other stuff. Yeah. Okay. So like take an athlete like Alafine on our team, right? So not only did she win the Olympic trials, but she's won the 6 months since, right? She's been crushing it between the beanies and her social media, which is hilarious and shows her personality and shows how caring she is, and the consistency that she has on social media. She's way more valuable to HOKA than she would be if she had only won the Olympic trials. Does that make sense? So that's where I see it. Is I see performance still as being number one, but I see that if you really want to get paid on top of that, you have to also be good at the other things. So it's kind of a long-winded answer, and a little bit, there was a little bit of rambling in there, but I hope I made a couple of points, because I think the answer to that question is a little bit nuanced.
Definitely. Does that play into any of the recruiting that you do?
Yes. Yes. I mean, at this point, we've realized after so many years that you have to be into that side of it. You have to agree with the concept that being a brand ambassador in 2020 is different as an athlete than it was in 2000 or 1990. And being active on social media, consciously trying to create a brand and promote yourself and the team to the running community at large is part of the job. And so if you don't believe that and you don't want to do that, then you're just not going to be a fit. And honestly, you're probably not going to run as well as you could because you're just not going to enjoy it because it's part of what we do. So yeah, it actually makes my job easier because it makes it easier to whittle down the pool of athletes to the folks that we know are going to be a fit for us.
That's awesome. Maybe one more question, and again, switching gears a little bit.
By the way, I just wanted to add, that's totally okay. I'm not ripping those people. Like if you're an athlete and you're saying, "Oh, forget this guy," I think that stuff's stupid. That's totally cool. Like, no problem. It just means you're not right for us. It doesn't mean you.
Well, that's the thing.
That's all it means.
There are so many athletes that just put their head down and they work, and that's it, and that's their. They don't care about communicating with fans, and they don't care about. That's not them. They're in it for intrinsic. They have intrinsic motivation. They want to get the best out of their legs and performance and whatnot. And it's just a different vibe.
And that's totally cool. And I have no problem with that. I just wanted to say that because I really believe that. And honestly, from a pragmatic standpoint, the only thing they probably need to realize is that A, they're going to need to perform really, really well. And B, they are leaving money on the table because in this day and age, you will get paid more if on top of those performances, as we said earlier, you're also engaging and participating in social media, et cetera, et cetera. But if that extra money doesn't matter to you, it's not worth it to you, totally cool. I mean, you see that in every sport, right? So no problem.
Definitely. One of the things that we talked about in our first conversation, you very candidly said, if running is the only thing that you have, I feel bad for you. We were talking about balance and having passions and pursuits outside of running. I think that point you made, I believe it was January of 2018, is more useful than ever before in today's day and age where there is so much going on and we do need some of these other things to balance out life. So my question is, what sort of guidance do you have for an amateur who might be struggling with that type of balance?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I think that it is a tough time. It is a tough time. And I hadn't thought about that till you asked this question because, I know plenty of amateur athletes from back in the day that I'm sure are struggling because running is a huge, huge part of their lives and they don't have the opportunity to race. There's no pop-up sunset tour for them. The road races they've all been canceled and looks like they're going to remain canceled for the fall at least. So I think, I think first of all, even though I said that, and I don't take it back, I don't mean to say that I don't mean to trivialize their running and what it means to them. I think that, I would certainly advise from a running standpoint that they play offense, that they figure out a way, if running is their passion, to set goals and create a sense of normalcy in their running, whether it's, circling a date on the calendar and saying, hey, I'm going to get my buddies together and do a time trial on October 28th. Or, we're going to run a marathon around our park on November 20th. Things like that I think are good. And those creating certainty in a world of uncertainty is good for one's mental health, in my experience. Regarding finding something else besides running, I think it's, like you say, it's probably as important, if not more so now than ever. But, that can be any number of things. It doesn't have to be something grandiose. It could be as simple as Alafine crocheting, right? Mm-hmm. Which she's turned into a crazy big business. But it could be super trivial stuff like, hey, maybe you're 40 like me and you used to love the NBA in the 90s and you've gotten away from it and maybe you get back into it now, right? Maybe it's golf, maybe it's tennis, sports that you can play and not have to worry about the virus, right? They've been deemed safe. Maybe it is some community related stuff. Maybe you do find a way to give back to others during this time when there are so many in need. I can tell you, helping out with that Run with Rivs fundraiser that was really Vince Sherry's idea and Mike Smith's idea. I was just helping. That was extremely gratifying. It's really selfishly, it feels good to help people. So maybe that's a road you can go down. I would just say to be open-minded and try other things, and who knows, maybe in a weird way that can end up helping your running in the long term.
Definitely. You said a couple of things there that really resonated, particularly creating certainty in a world of uncertainty and establishing some sense of normalcy. I came back from an injury, also a tibia injury from January, and I didn't run from January till basically the beginning of March. And as I was getting back into running and doing 20-minute runs, with run walk and then 20-minute runs and 30-minute runs and 40-minute runs, that was the best part of my day.
Yeah.
And it was, I was living by myself in a 4th floor walk up in in Boston. And I didn't feel safe anywhere, outside of that door, except for when I was running. Mm-hmm. And I think finding a way to allow running to be this, it can be a rock, but you have to be careful because it can get taken away at any moment. And for me, it was between that and the podcast, and I guess work, but really between, those 20-minute runs and, an hour podcast on a daily basis, that was the only certainty that I had in that world of uncertainty. And so I think that it's super, super cool to be able to frame it in that way. Creating certainty. You have control over this one thing. You can choose to put on your shoes and get out the door and do something that is for you, that will allow you to feel better. I think that's awesome. And then your point on it feels good to help people. Yeah, volunteering is incredible, all of that good stuff. So I think, there are so many opportunities where we can help other people, again, in today's day and age, but also in general. I think all that advice is really awesome.
Well, thanks. I try.
And I think that's a good place to wrap it up. So thanks so much for coming back on and sharing your wisdom. It's been awesome catching up and hearing about everything that's going on.
I appreciate it, Jonathan. You got a great podcast, and it was an honor to be on. And hey, maybe I'll be on in another 100 episodes.
Sounds good. You could be Mr. 300.
There you go. Sounds good to me.
Or 200. Awesome.
Thanks, man. See ya.
That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run. And in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.